Hello, and welcome to the first of a 12-part series being hosted through the Northern Colorado Yoga School on the 12 astrological signs presented over 12 holy days of this beginning, fresh, secular year. My name is Isha, and I am happy to share with you some thoughts on Aries today. So, as you well know, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and I'll be exploring this through an esoteric perspective, specifically through the Labors of Hercules, which is a book by Alice Bailey, where she explores the astrological signs through these 12 labors of Hercules. And each astrological sign represents a labor along the spiritual path. So the labors of Hercules, that first word is quite a clue to me anyway of how to look at these signs. So from an esoteric perspective, each zodiacal configuration is a divine energy force that each person along a path of initiation learns to pass through and to wield the energies and forces in that sign to extract the gifts. And it's a labor. And for me, there's no way around that. There's a gift and there's a challenge in each of these signs. And the story that I'll share with you a bit today will unveil a little bit about that. So, through the lens of esotericism, there are 4 key thoughts to unlock the esoteric perspective or esoteric knowing embedded in each of the zodiacal signs. These 4 key thoughts are like this. The first, nature expresses invisible energies through visible forms. I'll read it again. Nature expresses invisible energies through visible forms. So in this first key, we have an immediate orientation where we look out and recognize that all visible forms, whether they're actual concrete forms or they're thought forms in terms of ideas or any congealed form is an expression of an invisible energy beneath it or within it, animating it. So that's the first key thought. The second, and any study of comparative religion will reveal this, the concept of a concealed deity lies at the heart of all religion. Another way or another perspective to say this is that science seeks to understand this underlying or concealed reality through form. So both religion and science are working toward a similar thing through the opposite approach. Religion seeks it from the inside out, science from the outside in. The third key thought is a clue to the method of how to reach or understand or unlock this inward united energy, and that is to become the onlooker, the beholder, the perceiver. So when you see a form, to not so quickly be persuaded by it. Instead, to find a stance of this perceiver. And this quote finishes by, so you become the onlooker, the beholder, the perceiver, no longer identified with the matter aspect, but as the one who uses it as a medium of expression. So we can understand that so far these first 3 keys, when applied to astrology, reveal a very unique approach. It's that we see these astrological signs as expressions of an invisible energy that hints at something about the concealed identity that animates beneath these forms. And the clue we're given to understand is to perceive, to observe, to understand. So these are the first 3 keys. The 4th key is a bit more mysterious, and I'll read a quote from the Bhagavad Gita that gets at the heart of this. Listen to this great secret. Although I am above birth and rebirth, or law, being the Lord of all there is, for all emanates from me, still do I will to appear in my own universe, and am therefore born by my power and thought and will. Now, holding these 4 keys in mind, let's turn toward Aries and see what we see. So we know that Aries is the first sign of the labors of Hercules. I touched a bit on labor in terms of the challenge that it involves, but labor also holds a promise. If we think about a woman in labor, we know there is an enormous challenge to be faced, and we know new life will come, or new, maybe something completely unexpected. Although labor is difficult, we turn toward it because of the promise of the transformation that will come. Hercules, his name relates to Hera's rare glory. Hera represents the psyche or the soul, and his name embodied his mission to manifest forth in active work on the physical plane the glory and power of his innate divinity. This is direct from the Labors of Hercules by Alice Bailey. So in these 3, we have spirit, soul, and body summarized. Life, consciousness, and form meet in Hercules, the personal self, who, acting under the influence of the soul, of Hera's rare glory, we see the purpose of spirit carried out. So Aries is the initial commencing, propelling force that ignites this spiritual journey. Aries is the sign of this outgoing power. It streams forth into the world of forms and into the world of being or of spirit. It streams bi-directionally, both outward to inward and inward to outward. So in this story of Hercules, which I will go into, I'll actually read the whole story at a later point. It's called The Capture of the Man-Eating Mares, which is sort of a formidable title, but it tells the story of how Hercules embodied this initial outgoing energy. In the story, he bursts forth with tremendous amounts of confidence and certainty. He's young, he's fresh on the path, and this is a token sign of Aries. It's full of ignition and fire and the will to drive forth. In this story, it doesn't go according to Hercules' plan, which is also sort of a token Aries sign. Aries bursts forth on the battlefield. Aries is also ruled by Mars. And often the challenge has been underestimated. Often the excitement or the enthusiasm has outweighed the preparation. So while this is a sign of beginning and an initial stepping forth, it is also a sign of an initial failure, meaning it's a pattern within the energy of the constellation of Aries itself that it must be learned, that the initial bursting forth is essential and the initial failure is essential, because this sign holds within it certainty of success. So that will that bursts forth in the beginning must rediscover something as it overcomes the obstacle of its initial failure. So the sign is dynamic in this way. In the story, it has to do with Hercules capturing these man-eating mares. He underestimates their power and he hands the reins off and goes on. But as soon as he goes on and he's handed the reins off, the mares overtake the person that he left in charge and they eat him. And then Hercules has to turn back and capture them again. So Aries will learn this lesson because it's within. He does actually catch the mares again, and he completes the labor successfully, but it does involve a bit of a failure. And why is that failure so essential to this energy? Aries is the sign of hope. It is the sign of stepping out with fresh, fiery, new intentions, meeting a challenge and overcoming it despite all odds. Think about if you've ever set a New Year's resolution or you've ever made an intention that you wanted to fulfill. That is essential Aries at work within you. And when you step out with hope in a new direction, the wisdom of Aries will have you prepared for the failure that will come, where you'll drop the New Year's resolution and then have to double back your will, because the energy of hope is animating Aries. I think sometimes about the symbol of Aries, which looks, everyone says like a ram horn. But to my mind, sometimes I look at it and I see this journey of the soul into matter where it begins and then it falls, but then it rises back up and takes off again. So it is that like blip almost, or that dipping and then rising back up. And it's true that the ram is associated with Aries, but so is the horse. The sun chariot of Apollo is depicted as drawn by horses, and horses are understood as the, quote, princely sign of the ram. And this stories of Hercules certainly gives us that, because horses are an essential part of this story. I mentioned that Mars is the ruler, the exoteric ruler of the sign, but Mercury is the esoteric ruler. And Mercury is like quicksilver with the mind and speech. So when I think of Mercury, I think of having to hold a sword of discrimination and cut the sharp edges of just the right next word. And that process of discriminating with the sword becomes sharper and sharper, because I think eventually, before cutting the word, we get better at cutting out thought forms in the mind so they are crystal clear and exacting in their precision. So that's another hint of the inward working of Aries. So I've offered much for you to ponder: the 4 esoteric keys that relate to all zodiacal signs, which are again that nature expresses invisible energies through visible forms. That the second key relates to the fact of this indwelling, unified energy. The third key related to becoming the observer or the onlooker of these energies. And the fourth key, which is esoteric to anyone, relates to a quote from the Bhagavad Gita about this divine indwelling energy does incarnate. And there is a reason for that. And perhaps through these labors, we come to know it. So I will leave you with a chant that any good Aries will begin with. And it goes like this. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, which translates, "Oh Lord," it's an exclamation, and that could be however you understand Lord to be, O soul, O indwelling spirit, O divinity. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from, in other words, the unreal. Lead me from my confusion or my delusion or this glamour, this fog, to the real, to clarity, to understanding, to humility. The next line is Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Lead me from darkness to light. In other words, lead me from this ignorance or this confusion in my life to knowing, to truly perceiving. And the fourth line, Mrityor ma amritam gamaya, from death to immortality. In other words, lead me from this sense of limitation to limitlessness, to liberation. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. And so as we step out into this fresh new year, and when we access the energy of Aries, we can bring some of this preparation that we need, that initial spark of confidence and certainty and will to drive us out. And without that, we don't even take the first step. Sometimes I think, thank goodness I didn't know how challenging this would be. I'd never have gone. But instead, I have an Aries sun. I get plunged out. I inevitably inestimate the challenge, and I inevitably will overcome it because this sign helps cultivate the will. And so I hope you enjoy this chant. I will leave you with it in sound, and you may just listen and let the sounds wash over or chant along with, and I will look forward to all the new offerings to come in the new year. Take care. Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityo